Centralia, Pennsylvania. Centralia, Pennsylvania is a place that's being actively eaten from the inside out. The fear surrounding Centralia has nothing to do with crime or its people. Instead, it comes from the smoldering hell that has been burning beneath the city's feet for over 60 years. So how did this even happen? You're not going to believe it. It all started back in 1962 with something totally normal. They set a fire to burn some trash in an old mining pit. The problem was, nobody realized that pit connected to a massive network of abandoned coal mines. The fire just slipped down and lit a coal seam, and it never went out. For years, you couldn't really see it. You might just smell something weird, or hear people talking about how the ground felt warm. But then the earth started showing you what was happening. Steam and poison gas started hissing out of cracks in the ground. The soil got so hot that people's gardens were literally cooking from below. Then the ground itself just gave up. The main highway, Route 61, buckled and split open, a huge permanent scar on the land. And here's the craziest part, it's never going to stop. Scientists figure there's enough coal down there for the fire to burn for another 250 years. The government just threw in the towel in the 80s, told everyone to leave, and condemned the whole town. Almost everyone took the deal. Today you can count the residents on two hands. They're living in a ghost town, with empty streets and this weird constant warmth coming from the ground. It's this terrifying living proof that some dangers are quiet and patient, and they will outlast all of us. And to make sure you're always on solid ground with our stories, hit that subscribe button. Paradise, California. So if Centralia is this slow-motion nightmare, Paradise, California is the exact opposite. It's what happens when a whole town just vanishes in a single morning. This is a completely different kind of fear, a modern fear, the dread of knowing everything can be gone in the time it takes to drink a cup of coffee. This is the opposite of a slow burn. It's the instantaneous horror of what they call a megafire. It was November 8th, 2018. A small brush fire started, but the conditions were perfect for a monster. The land was bone dry, and the winds were howling. The fire didn't just grow, it exploded. Get this, at its peak, the blaze, called the campfire, was swallowing a football field of land every second. It didn't just move towards Paradise, it fell on it from all sides at once. People who were there said it was like the apocalypse, fire tornadoes, embers the size of houses flying through the air. The roads out became these tunnels of smoke and fire. People had to abandon their cars and just run for their lives. In less than 4 hours, the entire town of 26,000 people was gone. Just gone. Nearly 19,000 buildings were turned to ash. 85 people died. The name Paradise became this global, tragic irony. It's a brutal lesson that the dangers we face now move faster than we can think. A fear born from the terrifying, smoke-filled skies above, a world away from the dangers lurking below. And as terrifying as a sudden disaster is, it's nothing compared to the fear of a place where the danger isn't a surprise, but a cold, hard number. We'll get to that city, the one that tops our list, at the very end. New Orleans, Louisiana. You know, there's a kind of fear that's so constant, it just becomes part of the background noise. For the people of New Orleans, that's just life. It's not about one single event, it's about the place itself. This is something deeper than the fear of a single moment of terror. It is the existential dread of geography itself. You have this city that is bursting with more life, more culture, more soul than almost anywhere else on Earth. And all of it, every single bit of it, is in constant danger. The fear in New Orleans is the fear of water. The very thing that gives the region life is also just patiently waiting to take it all back. It's such a strange setup when you think about it. The whole city is built in a bowl, mostly below sea level, sitting right next to a massive river, a huge lake, and the Gulf of Mexico. The only reason it's there is because of this insane, sprawling maze of levees and pumps holding the water back. And if you live there, you're always aware of it. Every big storm, every hurricane watch, it's this collective moment where everyone just holds their breath. It's the psychology of living in a place that shouldn't, by any law of nature, really exist. And we all saw what happens when those defenses fail. In 2005, Hurricane Katrina wasn't just a storm. It was a man-made catastrophe. The levees broke, they failed, and 80% of the city was underwater. An American city just drowned. But the incredible thing about New Orleans is that the same defiant, joyful culture that was almost wiped out is what brought it back to life. The fear didn't make them leave. It made them double down. It makes you wonder, right? What does it mean to love a place that could betray you at any moment? Detroit, Michigan? Okay, so we've seen fear from fire, from water, but what about a fear we built ourselves? That's the story of Detroit. This was it. The Motor City, the engine of the American dream, and then it became the global symbol of that dream collapsing. The fear of Detroit is watching something you thought was permanent just crumble into dust. It doesn't leave behind a crater or a floodplain. It creates a haunting landscape of decay. It's hard to overstate how important Detroit was. For the first half of the 20th century, this was the place to be. The auto industry was booming, and the city's population swelled to almost 2 million people. It was ambitious, it was powerful, its name meant progress. But the thing that built the city is also what broke it. The car companies started moving jobs out, first to the suburbs, then out of the country. And as the factories emptied, so did the city. Think about it. The city's population fell by over 65%. Where did all those people go? What they left behind was just emptiness. Huge parts of the city became ghost towns. Thousands and thousands of beautiful homes, schools, theaters just left to rot. It's where that whole ruin porn thing came from. People taking pictures of all this decaying grandeur. And by 2013, the city was so broke, it had to declare the biggest municipal bankruptcy in American history. Now Detroit is fighting its way back, for sure, but the scars are there. It's this giant concrete warning that the empires we build can absolutely fall. It's a chilling reminder of what can be lost. But that got me thinking. What about a fear that isn't about losing something great, but about what was never there in the first place? Gary, Indiana. So, if Detroit is the story of a dream dying, Gary, Indiana is what happens when you visit its ghost. This place is just a short drive from Chicago, but it feels like another world. Gary wasn't a city that grew over time, it was created. Popped into existence by a corporation, U.S. Steel. They built it from nothing in 1906 to be the perfect factory town. And for a while, it worked. But because it was built by one industry, it was completely destroyed by that same industry. It's a terrifying look at what happens after the collapse. It's the fear of being totally and completely forgotten. For a long time, the steel mills in Gary were cranking. The city was growing, people had good jobs. But then, starting in the 60s, the American steel industry just started to rust out. U.S. Steel laid off thousands of workers. And because the mills were the only real game in town, when the jobs left, the people left. The population collapsed. And with no people, There's no tax money, right? So city services just fell apart. Businesses closed. Anyone who could get out, got out. What's left feels like a movie set for the end of the world. Gary is famous now for all of its abandoned buildings, gorgeous old theaters, huge stone churches, whole neighborhoods just sitting there, hollowed out and rotting. At one point in the 90s, things got so bad that Gary was labeled the murder capital of the nation. And while things are better now, that feeling of emptiness is still there. It isn't about the memory of greatness. It's about the chilling silence of its absence. It's the fear that the world has so completely moved on, it doesn't even remember you were here. Baltimore, Maryland. This is where the story gets complicated. Because we're moving from fears you can see, like empty buildings or floodwaters, to a fear that's built into the very map of a city. Baltimore is a place with so much history, so much character. But it's also haunted by a dread that doesn't stem from a single event or industry. It's born from generations of systemic inequality. The fear in Baltimore is the fear of invisible lines that were drawn 100 years ago to divide people, and the way those lines still trap people today. You have to understand, this was all done on purpose. Back in the early 1900s, Baltimore was one of the first cities to pass laws that made it illegal for black families to move into white neighborhoods. This idea then became the model for the federal government's policy of redlining. They literally drew lines on a map, red lines, and said, no bank loans, no investment, no resources in these areas. And guess who lived in those neighborhoods? These were far more than just lines on a map. They were the architects of a multi-generational crisis, designed to concentrate poverty and cut off any chance of building wealth. And that history is not history. It is terrifyingly present. You can still see the effects of it today. The neighborhoods that were redlined are the same ones that now struggle with poverty, failing schools, and a lack of opportunity. And all of that desperation creates a cycle of violence. So, the fear in Baltimore isn't just about crime stats. It's a daily grinding fear of stray bullets, of your kids not having a future, of being stuck in a system that was designed to hold you down. It's the chilling idea that the strongest prisons aren't made of bars, but of policies. Camden, New Jersey. What happens when you can't call for help? When the systems that are supposed to protect you are just gone? For a long time, that was the reality in Camden, New Jersey. It's right across the river from Philadelphia, but it felt a world away. Camden became a national punchline for a city that had completely collapsed. It was, for many years, the most dangerous city in America. The fear here was raw. It was the fear of total lawlessness. Camden's fall was stunning. It used to be a thriving industrial city, home to huge companies like RCA. But when those industries disappeared, the city's economy was just annihilated. Anyone who could afford to leave left. The city went broke and just spiraled into this vortex of poverty and violence. By the early 2000s, it was a complete free-for-all. Drug markets operated out in the open. The murder rate was insane. In 2012 alone, there were 67 murders in a city of only about 70,000 people. You can't even process that number. The situation got so bad, they did something unbelievable. In 2013, they just disbanded the entire police force, fired everyone. They started over from scratch with a new county-wide department. It was this crazy, desperate, last-ditch effort to break the cycle, and you know what? It seems to have worked. Crime has dropped dramatically, but the memory of being left for dead is still there. Camden's story is this terrifying look at how thin the line between a functioning society and total chaos really is. But even Camden's story can't compete with the cold, hard data of our final city. St. Louis, Missouri. All right, we've talked about all these different kinds of fear: the slow burn, the sudden disaster, the ghost of industry, the weight of history. But our journey ends with the most straightforward, undeniable fear of all: the numbers. And the numbers lead us straight to St. Louis, Missouri. For years, this city has been known as America's capital of violent crime. The fear in St. Louis isn't about a potential catastrophe in the future. It's about the cold statistical probability of violence today, where your chances of being a victim are just brutally, terrifyingly high. This isn't just a bad year or a statistical blip. For years, if you look at the FBI data, St. Louis is almost always at or near the top of the list for both violent crime and murder rates per capita. But why? The violence is far from random. It is heavily concentrated, and it is the direct result of the city's own divided history. Just like Baltimore, St. Louis is a city cut in half. There's a street called Delmar Boulevard, and everyone there knows it as the Delmar Divide. South of that line, the neighborhoods are mostly white and wealthy. North of the line, they are overwhelmingly black and have been starved of investment for decades. And guess where nearly all the violence happens? It's the tragic, predictable outcome of drawing a line down the middle of a city and choosing to only care about one side. So the fear in St. Louis feels different depending on where you are. For the people living north of Delmar, it's a constant daily threat. For the rest of the city, it's a reputation that poisons everything. And while the city is working hard to bring those numbers down, that statistical shadow is incredibly long. St. Louis is the end of our list because it's where all the other fears we've talked about, economic collapse, systemic division, generations of neglect, all come together and get translated into the harshest language there is: data. It proves that the most feared city isn't just a place that might face a disaster. It's a place that's already living in one.